Rain had started falling long before the wedding music began. It was not loud or wild, just steady, cold drops that soaked into clothes and skin slowly, as if the sky itself was tired and heavy. Emma stood near the edge of the garden, holding her shawl tightly around her shoulders. She was not standing there by choice. She had been placed there. Emma had always known her place in her family. From childhood, it was clear who mattered more. Her parents' eyes followed her younger sister Lily wherever she went. Lily's grades were praised, her clothes admired, her opinions respected. Emma learned early how to stay quiet, how to smile when ignored, how to swallow words before they reached her mouth. She told herself it was normal, that every family had a favorite. Still, the feeling stayed, like a small stone pressed against her heart. Today was Lily's wedding day, and it was supposed to be joyful. The house was full of guests, laughter, music, and the smell of flowers. Inside the large tent, chairs were neatly arranged, covered in white cloth. Warm lights glowed above, and people chatted comfortably, protected from the rain. But Emma was not inside. Her mother had pointed toward the garden earlier, her voice sharp and impatient. "Sit there. We need the front seats for important guests." No explanation, no apology. Just an order. Emma had looked around, confused, her eyes stopping on the empty chairs inside. She wanted to ask why, but years of silence held her back. She nodded and walked outside. Now she sat on a simple plastic chair, rain falling freely around her. Her dress, chosen carefully to look neat and respectful, was already damp at the bottom. Her hair clung to her face. Guests passed by without stopping, some pretending not to see her, others offering quick looks filled with judgment or pity. Each glance felt like a quiet insult. Her hands trembled, not only from the cold but from the familiar pain rising in her chest. This was Lily's special day, everyone said. Emma was expected to understand, to accept anything for the sake of peace. Still, something inside her began to crack. Beside her stood Ethan, her husband. He held an umbrella, tilted slightly so it covered her more than himself. Drops slid down his jacket, darkening the fabric. His shoes were old but clean, his clothes simple and plain. To Emma's family, that was enough to decide his worth. They called him poor. Not to his face, but loudly enough for him to hear. They spoke about his job with thin smiles, praised Lily's groom for his expensive watch and confident walk. No one asked Ethan about his dreams, his thoughts, or his kindness. They had already made up their minds. Ethan did not complain. He never did. He stood there quietly, his face calm, his eyes steady. Emma looked up at him, wondering how he could remain so still when her heart felt like it was breaking apart. She felt ashamed for dragging him into this moment, into her family's cold judgment. She remembered how her father had laughed weeks ago, asking if Ethan could even afford a decent gift. She remembered her mother's silence when relatives whispered about Emma marrying down. Each memory burned now, sharper than before. The wedding music grew louder inside the tent. Applause followed as Lily walked down the aisle, dry and glowing, surrounded by smiles. Emma watched from a distance, rain blurring her vision. She felt like a stranger at her own family's celebration. A sudden gust of wind sent water splashing onto her lap. She gasped softly. Her cheeks flushed, a mix of anger and humiliation. She wanted to stand up, to walk away, to scream that she mattered too. But her legs stayed still. Ethan noticed her shaking. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, grounding her. "It's okay," he said softly. His voice was low, steady, almost comforting. There was something in his tone that made Emma pause. Not pity. Not weakness. Something stronger, hidden. She looked at him closely then. His eyes were not filled with shame or fear. They held patience, yes, but also certainty. As if he knew something no one else did. The rain continued to fall, but Emma no longer felt only cold. A quiet anger settled inside her, calm but powerful. She realized this moment, as painful as it was, meant something. It was exposing the truth of her family, of their love, and of the way they judged people. Guests laughed inside. The ceremony went on. Outside, under the grey sky, Emma sat in silence beside a man the world had underestimated. And somewhere deep within that silence, something was waiting to rise. The rain did not stop after the ceremony. It slowed for a while, then returned, tapping softly against the ground like quiet reminders. Emma stayed seated, her dress heavier now, her body tired, but her mind restless. Watching people move in and out of the tent pulled her into memories she tried to forget. She remembered being a little girl, standing in the kitchen while her parents praised Lily for winning a small school prize. Emma had stood there too, holding her own paper in her hand, waiting for someone to notice. No one did. That was the first time she learned how easy it was to disappear. Those memories came back clearly as she sat in the rain. Her parents' voices echoed in her mind, always proud when speaking of Lily, always careful and distant when it came to her. When Emma had announced her marriage to Ethan, the disappointment was impossible to hide. Her mother had asked about his income before asking about his character. Her father had warned her not to expect support if things went wrong. Inside the tent, laughter rose again. The guests were now enjoying warm food and music. Emma could smell it from where she sat, the scent of rich dishes mixing with the wet earth. Her stomach tightened, not from hunger, but from the feeling of being unwanted. Ethan remained beside her. He did not look toward the tent much. Instead, he watched the rain, as if it held answers. Emma wondered what he was thinking. Did he regret marrying into her family? Did he feel small standing there, judged and ignored? She remembered how Lily's groom, Ryan, had shaken Ethan's hand earlier that day. The grip had been strong, almost too strong, the smile sharp and proud. Ryan had talked loudly about his job, his plans, his success. People listened closely. Heads nodded. Ethan had smiled politely, said very little. That silence had been taken as weakness. Emma felt her chest tighten again. She hated how everyone compared them. She hated how her parents used those comparisons like quiet weapons. More than anything, she hated herself for staying silent. Her mother stepped outside briefly, heels sinking into the wet ground. She frowned when she saw Emma still there. "Why are you sitting like that?" she asked, irritation clear in her voice. "You should look happy today. Don't embarrass us." Emma opened her mouth, then closed it. The words stayed trapped inside. Her mother did not wait for an answer. She turned and walked back inside, leaving wet footprints behind. Ethan saw the pain on Emma's face. He leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to explain yourself to anyone," he said. Emma wanted to believe him. She nodded, though her eyes burned. She wondered how long one could stay strong before breaking. She wondered if love was enough to survive moments like this. Time passed slowly. Guests began moving toward the reception area. Music changed, becoming louder and more cheerful. Laughter spilled into the open air. Emma felt like she was sitting outside a glass wall, close enough to see happiness, too far to touch it. She noticed people looking at Ethan again. Some whispered. Some smiled with hidden meanings. One woman glanced at his shoes and shook her head slightly. Emma's hands clenched into fists. She felt a sharp urge to stand up and defend him, to tell everyone they were wrong. But Ethan remained calm. There was a quiet confidence in the way he stood, as if the rain and the stairs meant nothing to him. That calm made Emma curious. It felt different from before, stronger. She realized then that Ethan had never tried to prove himself. He never spoke about money or status. He listened more than he talked. He noticed things others ignored. Maybe that was why people misunderstood him. Emma's fear slowly shifted into something else. A sense of waiting. As if this moment of humiliation was not the end, but the beginning of something unseen. The rain softened again. Emma lifted her face slightly, letting cool drops touch her skin. She took a deep breath. For the first time that day, she felt steady. Inside the tent, the celebration continued. Outside, Emma sat beside her husband, carrying years of quiet pain. Yet beneath that pain, something new was forming. A feeling she could not name yet. A sense that the story was far from over. The evening grew darker as the sun slipped away behind heavy clouds. Lights inside the tent glowed brighter, casting warm shadows on the wet ground outside. Emma felt the cold settling deeper into her bones, But she did not move. It was no longer just about the rain. It was about dignity. People began lining up near the entrance for photos. Laughter filled the air, mixed with music and the sound of glasses clinking. Emma watched as families posed together, smiling wide, pretending everything was perfect. She wondered if anyone noticed her absence, or if her place had already been forgotten. Her father stepped out with two relatives, his voice loud and cheerful. When he saw Emma, his smile dropped. He walked toward her, irritation written clearly on his face. "Why are you still here?" he asked. "You should be grateful you were invited at all. Don't create a scene today." The words struck her harder than the rain. Grateful. As if her presence was a favor. Emma felt her throat tighten. Years of silence pressed against her chest, begging to be released. She looked down, afraid that if she spoke, her voice would shake. Ethan took a small step forward. Not in anger, not in challenge. Just enough to stand beside her fully. "She isn't creating a scene," he said calmly. "She's just sitting." Emma's father scoffed. "Stay out of this," he replied. "This is family business." Ethan did not argue. He nodded slightly and stepped back, but something in his eyes changed. It was brief, almost invisible, but Emma noticed. A line had been crossed. Her father turned and walked away, laughing again as if nothing had happened. Emma felt tears gather, but she refused to let them fall. Crying here would only prove them right. She stared at the ground, watching rainwater pool around her shoes. Her hands were numb. Her heart felt tired. This was the moment she had feared for years, the moment when she realized that no matter how much she tried, she would never be enough for them. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Ethan, her voice barely audible. "I didn't think it would be this bad." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her. His expression softened. "You have nothing to be sorry for," he said. "Not today. Not ever." There was something different in his tone now. Stronger. Certain. It sent a small shiver through her, not from the cold. A server walked past, stopping briefly to offer drinks to guests near the entrance. He glanced at Emma, hesitated, then walked on without offering anything. It was a small moment, but it hurt more than she expected. It confirmed what she already felt. She was invisible. Emma closed her eyes for a second, breathing slowly. She told herself she would endure this too, like everything else. But inside, something finally gave way. Not loudly. Not in anger. Quietly. Ethan's phone vibrated in his pocket. He took it out and looked at the screen. Emma noticed how his posture changed. His shoulders straightened. His face became serious, focused. He stepped a little away from the chair to answer the call, speaking softly so no one else could hear. Emma did not try to listen. She was too busy fighting the weight in her chest. After a few moments, Ethan ended the call and returned to her side. He looked down at her, a calm expression on his face, but his eyes were steady and unreadable. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice tired. He nodded. "I am," he said. Then, after a pause, he added, "And you will be too. Just stay with me." Emma searched his face for answers, but he gave none. Still, his words settled inside her, warm and unexpected. For the first time that night, she felt like someone was protecting her. The music grew louder. The rain continued. Guests laughed, unaware of the quiet shift happening outside. Emma did not know what Ethan's phone call meant, but she felt it clearly. Something had started moving, and it was no longer out of her control. The rain finally slowed, turning into a light mist that hung in the air. The ground was wet and cold, but the noise from inside the tent grew louder, warmer, almost careless. Emma remained seated, her hands resting quietly in her lap. She felt drained, as if every emotion she had held for years had slowly emptied out of her. Ethan stood beside her, silent. After the phone call, he seemed different. Not distant, but focused. His calm was no longer passive. It carried weight, like a decision had already been made. Emma watched him from the corner of her eye. She wanted to ask who had called, what it was about, but something held her back. Maybe it was fear of hoping too much. Maybe it was the strange sense that the answer would come on its own. Inside the tent, the music stopped suddenly. A short pause followed, then a voice spoke into the microphone. It was the wedding planner, asking everyone to prepare for a special announcement before dinner. Guests clapped lightly, curious and smiling. Emma felt a small tightening in her chest. Announcements never meant anything good for her. People began moving toward the center area. Some stepped outside briefly, adjusting clothes, fixing hair. A few noticed Emma and Ethan and slowed down, their eyes lingering a second longer than before. There was a shift in the air, subtle but real. Lily's groom, Ryan, walked past them with a confident smile, talking on his phone. His voice was loud, proud. He laughed, then stopped suddenly. His expression changed as he listened. The smile faded. His steps slowed. Emma noticed it. So did others. Ryan lowered his phone, his face pale. He looked around, confused, then angry. He turned sharply toward the tent and walked back inside without saying a word. Whispers followed him. Emma's heart began to beat faster. She looked at Ethan, who remained still, his eyes following Ryan calmly. There was no surprise in his expression. "Ethan," Emma said quietly, her voice unsure. "What's going on?" He looked down at her, his gaze gentle. "Just trust me," he replied. "You don't need to do anything." Before she could respond, her mother stepped outside again. This time, her face was tense. She looked around, clearly searching for someone. When her eyes landed on Ethan, she froze. She walked toward them slowly, uncertainty replacing her earlier pride. "Ethan," she said, forcing a polite smile. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" Emma stared at her in disbelief. This was the same woman who had ignored her suffering only an hour ago. Ethan nodded slightly. "Of course," he said. They stepped a short distance away, still within sight. Emma watched their faces closely. Her mother spoke in a low voice, her hands moving nervously. Ethan listened without interrupting. When he replied, his words were brief. Whatever he said made her mother's face lose color. She nodded quickly and walked away, her heels unsteady on the wet ground. Emma's breath caught. Her hands began to shake again, but this time it was not from cold. Inside the tent, voices rose. The wedding planner spoke again, sounding nervous now. A man in a dark suit approached Ryan and spoke to him quietly. Ryan's face twisted in anger. He raised his voice, drawing attention. Guests turned. Silence spread. Emma stood up slowly, her legs weak. Ethan moved closer to her, standing slightly in front of her, not blocking her view, but protecting her space. Lily appeared near the front, confusion written across her face. She looked from Ryan to the man in the suit, then toward the crowd. Her perfect day was beginning to crack. The man in the suit cleared his throat and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. He explained there was an urgent business matter involving Ryan's job. Effective immediately, Ryan was no longer employed by his company. Gasps filled the tent. Ryan shouted in disbelief, demanding answers. The man calmly explained that the decision came from the top. From someone with authority. From someone who had been watching quietly for a long time. Eyes began to move through the crowd, searching. Then they landed on Ethan. Emma felt her heart stop for a moment. She looked at him, truly looked at him, as if seeing him for the first time. His posture was steady, his expression composed. There was no pride on his face. No anger. Only certainty. Whispers grew louder. People turned fully now, staring openly. The same man they had dismissed. The same husband they had called poor. Emma's parents stood frozen near the front. Her mother's hand covered her mouth. Her father's face was unreadable. The rain outside had almost stopped completely. Emma felt something warm rise in her chest. Not joy. Not revenge. Relief. The kind that comes when the truth finally steps into the light. She did not speak. She did not need to. For the first time in her life, the world was looking at her husband with respect. And for the first time, she felt seen. Silence hung heavy over the tent. It was not the peaceful kind, but the sharp kind that presses against the ears. Guests shifted in their seats, unsure whether to whisper or remain still. The celebration music never returned. The joy that once filled the space had slipped away, leaving confusion behind. Ryan's face burned red with anger and fear. He argued loudly, demanding explanations, calling it a mistake. His voice echoed, desperate now, stripped of confidence. The man in the dark suit listened patiently, then repeated the decision without emotion. There would be no discussion. No second chances. Lily stood beside Ryan, her eyes wide, her hands shaking. She looked lost, as if the ground beneath her had suddenly disappeared. She turned toward her parents, searching for comfort, but they were just as stunned. Emma remained standing near the entrance, rainwater dripping softly from the edge of the tent behind her. She felt oddly calm. The humiliation she had carried all day was slowly fading, replaced by a quiet strength she had never felt before. Guests began to turn fully toward Ethan now. Some stared openly. Others whispered behind their hands. A few looked embarrassed, remembering their earlier smiles and judgments. The same man they had ignored was now the center of attention. Ethan stepped forward slightly, not to claim the moment, but to end it. His voice was steady when he spoke. "This has nothing to do with the wedding," he said calmly. "Please don't let this ruin the day." His words only deepened the shock. Emma felt her throat tighten again, but this time it was not from pain. It was from pride. Her father slowly approached them. His steps were uncertain, his shoulders tense. When he reached Emma, he looked at her, truly looked at her, as if seeing her for the first time in years. His voice was quiet. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, his tone no longer harsh. Emma met his eyes. She did not raise her voice. "You never asked," she replied simply. The words hung between them, honest and heavy. Her mother joined them, her expression shaken. She glanced at Ethan, then back at Emma. "We didn't know," she said softly, as if that alone could erase everything. Emma said nothing. She had learned that some apologies came too late to change the past. Around them, the guests slowly began to leave their seats. Some avoided eye contact. Others offered awkward smiles. A few nodded respectfully toward Ethan, unsure of what else to do. Lily finally walked toward Emma, her dress spotless, her face pale. "I didn't know they put you outside," she said quietly. Her voice held guilt, but also confusion. Emma studied her sister's face. She wondered how much Lily truly saw, and how much she had chosen not to see all these years. "It's fine," Emma said gently. "It's over now." But she knew it was not just about today. It never had been. Ethan placed a hand on Emma's back, light and steady. It was not a gesture of power, but of support. It reminded her that she was not alone anymore. The rain stopped completely. The night air felt fresh, almost clean. It felt like something heavy had been washed away. The wedding did not continue as planned. Conversations turned quiet. Smiles became forced. The perfect image everyone tried to protect had cracked, revealing what lay beneath. Emma took a deep breath. For years, she had felt small in her own family. Tonight, she realized she no longer needed their approval to feel whole. She looked at Ethan, her husband, the man they had underestimated. He met her gaze and smiled softly. Not in victory. In reassurance. Whatever happened next, she knew one thing clearly. The story was no longer about shame. It was about truth. The guests slowly began to leave, their footsteps soft against the wet ground. No one laughed now. Conversations were quiet, careful, as if everyone was afraid to say the wrong thing. The night felt different, calmer, but also honest. Emma stood near the edge of the tent, watching people disappear into the darkness. The place that had once made her feel small no longer held power over her. She felt tired, but light, as if a long weight had finally been lifted from her chest. Her parents approached her again, this time without anger or pride. Her mother's eyes were red, her voice low. "We treated you unfairly," she said. "We were wrong." Emma listened in silence. She did not rush to respond. Apologies did not erase years of neglect, but hearing the truth still mattered. Her father cleared his throat. "We judged Ethan without knowing him," he admitted. "We judged you too." Emma nodded slowly. "I know," she said. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only clarity. Ethan stood beside her, saying nothing. He did not need to speak. His presence was enough. Lily joined them, her expression softer than before. "I'm sorry," she said, looking down. "I should have noticed. I should have said something." Emma looked at her sister for a long moment. She saw not the favored child, but a woman shaped by the same parents, in a different way. "I hope you learn from this," Emma replied gently. "That's all I want." The night air cooled as clouds moved away, revealing a few stars. The ground still held signs of rain, but the sky felt open again. Ethan reached for Emma's hand, his fingers warm and steady. She held on, feeling safe in a way she never had before. Not because of wealth or power, but because of respect. As they walked away from the wedding, Emma realized something important. The rain had not broken her. It had washed away illusions. It had shown her who truly stood beside her and who only valued appearances. She no longer needed to prove her worth. She no longer needed permission to belong. The story people would tell about that night would focus on shock and embarrassment. On power revealed at the wrong time. But Emma knew the deeper truth. It was the night she stopped shrinking. It was the night she chose herself. And as she stepped forward with Ethan, leaving the lights behind, she felt certain of one thing. Her future would be written with dignity, not silence.